One of my least favorite things in existence are kidney stones. I toured Japan last autumn with May. Their drummer Jake was recalling the time he got a kidney stone and said something like, "Man, it hurt so bad, I just collapsed on the ground crying." I remember secretly thinking, wow, those things really hurt that bad? Naturally, I'd heard grapevine stories about kidney stones, but they were uncommon freak accidents, old wives' tales, the sort of thing other people's dads got, and therefore were nothing to really worry about. Little did I know, I was a ticking time bomb. 6 months after sympathetically chuckling along with Jake and his kidney stone fairy tale, I found myself relaxing on the customary disgusting green room couch in a venue in St. Louis. Somebody said something hilarious and I burst out laughing. Moments later, I felt a slight twinge in my lower back and thought nothing of it until it grew from probably just a bull buzzle or something into a hideous raging monster. The conversation Jake and I had in Tokyo flashed before my eyes as I immediately followed suit and collapsed on the ground crying, "Big surprise." His description was both remarkably and painfully accurate in every subtle nuance and detail. The pain was unbelievably agonizing, easily the worst of my life. I couldn't walk, I couldn't sing, I couldn't play Nintendo, I couldn't even breathe. All I could do was involuntarily writhe around on the floor, holding my lower back while everyone else peered down at me with horrified looks on their faces. Between tsunamis of agony, I passed in and out of consciousness like nobody's business. At one point I vaguely remember somebody casually walking in, taking one look at me and saying, "Yuck, what's the matter with him?" That was in January. 2 weeks ago, I was in studio mixing a new track when I felt an all too familiar twinge. This time I didn't even hesitate. I immediately dropped everything, sprinted to my car and raced myself to the emergency room at 30 miles per hour over the speed limit. I'd learned my lesson the first time. When disaster strikes, you don't just gulp a handful of ibuprofen, sprawl on the couch and wait out the storm. You get your handsome little self to the nearest emergency room and ultimately an IV full of morphine. The pain is that unendurable. It's debilitating. It's paralyzing. You don't mess around with kidney stones. Upon hearing of my recent escapade, commercial pilot, kidney stone survivor, and one of my old pals, Dan Clark, had this to say about the cantankerous little demons. "Kidney stones. Just one of many great memories from Owatonna. There's nothing that's quite like these spirits of rolling around on a stainless steel emergency table being hustled through the medicinal-smelling Owatonna hospital. Convinced your body has betrayed you and will shortly split open. Ah, the memories. Especially the part when I was begging for drugs. But sadly they said I couldn't have anything because it will shut down all my normal body functions, and then the stone will not continue its glorious tour through all my cherished passages. Instead they gave me an IV bag of fluid to increase the pain. Sure, they said it was to keep the stone moving through, but we all knew it was because they're sick, psychotic, evil people. If they gave me anything, it was probably a placebo, because I'm convinced it had absolutely no effect. Anyway, the birth of my 2mm stone was such a joy. Like Adam, my labor pains lasted about 6 hours, and then stopped instantly. No slow reduction of pain, just yeah, and then nothing. I thought I must have just died. I no longer feel a thing. Then they caught the stone, analyzed it, and confirmed that, as a rule, pilots need to drink more water. Altitude increases one's dehydration. At least it wasn't a chemical or metabolic imbalance in my case. Just cut out the coffee and drink more water. So far, I haven't had the repeated pleasure. I don't really have any more insight other than if you're traveling a lot, reduce your caffeine intake and increase clear fluids. I had one doctor ask, "Do you have a bathroom on the airplane?" I said yes, and he asked why I didn't drink more water and just use the lav. I told him I didn't want to crawl over all the passengers to get to the lav. It would be embarrassing. He looked at me with that condescending, over-the-reading glasses look and asked if it would be less embarrassing than grabbing my private parts rolling around on a stainless steel gurney for 6 hours trying to find a comfortable position. I guess the question sort of answered itself. Wretched things. I wouldn't wish a kidney stone on my worst enemy. Like Dan, I don't really have much brilliant advice to offer anyone except to say this. Should you ever become blessed with a magical stone of your own and ultimately find yourself writhing around the floor in immense torment, you may indeed find solace in the following famous words. This too shall pass.